So I've been pretty excited about Brawlout ever since I saw the E3 trailer. I thought the visuals were very impressive and all the animations looked very good, and I was excited to try the game. I want the fighting game genre to succeed, but it's just not happening. And it's really sad to me because I feel like there's really obvious and easy steps that the fighting game genre could take. It's just frustrating to me because I think that fighting game developers don't really understand the outlook that people who aren't fighting game players have on fighting games. There are so many games being made these days, and obviously a portion of them are very good. And if you're a fighting game developer, you need to recognize that this genre is so tiny. It's just a minuscule spot on the map of video games. And when you're marketing to a general consumer, your trailer or video or whatever, they have to decide whether your game is interesting enough purely off of that video or trailer, and then they also need to decide whether it's interesting enough that they're going to end up playing it more than the games they currently play, or else it's just not worth the purchase for them. It's really hard to convince a general consumer that it's worth purchasing a game like Brawlout, or even another game I'm really excited about, Fantasy Strike, because it's a fighting game. This genre has a history of being incredibly difficult to play, and even more importantly, incredibly difficult to learn. So even if your game is easy to pick up, like in the case of Brawlout, you can pick this game up, and you can play it regardless of your level of skill. You'll be able to throw out abilities and participate in a match, where in other fighting games, because of the quarter circle movements and things like that, it's usually pretty hard to get into it if you haven't played before. But even if you have a game like Brawlout where it's not like that, it doesn't really matter because the consumer or player won't know any of that. They won't know how it feels. You can try marketing it and saying things like easy inputs or one button abilities or whatever, but that has an inherent problem also. A non-fighting game player has no idea what you're talking about when you say those things, and calling your game easy or easier is just not helping either. You need to be able to shape the consumer's view of the entire genre, and I know that's significantly harder than it is for any other genre, but it's still important, because they will have so many preconceived notions about what this game is, just because of the genre that it's in. The only way you can truly convince someone who hasn't played a fighting game in either a very long time or even just hasn't played a fighting game at all is to let them try the game. And saying, hey, $20 to buy and try our game, even though it is just $20, it's just too much to ask for when we have such a huge influx of good games being made today. That's not to say that Brawlout is not worth $20. It would be, if there was enough people playing the game. But that active community is so important. My solution is incredibly simple, and other genres have noticed this as well. The MOBA genre, even when it first started off, is almost entirely a free-to-play genre. And for a good reason. It was a new genre. The MOBA developers knew that it was going to be hard to convince people to play this strange new concept because it looked a hell of a lot like an RTS, one of the hardest game genres of all time. The reason I'm talking about all of this is because I sat in a queue for 40 minutes trying to find a game in Brawlout and was unable to. To be fair, I live in Australia, one of the least populated regions, and therefore it was going to be pretty difficult for me to be able to find a game. But regardless, this should be one of the most active times for Brawlout. Why should it be one of the most active times for Brawlout? Well, they just had a big presentation at E3, and they're currently on sale during the biggest Steam sale of the year. Well, one of the biggest Steam sales of the year. But even with all that, I can't find a game online. For people curious about how it would even be possible to do a free-to-play fighting game, you don't have to get it from me, it's simple. They've already done it. Brawlhalla is a game that I personally dislike the gameplay of. I'm not a huge fan of it. I don't like the weapon system, although some people love it, but competitively, it's just not for me. That being said, I still find myself going back to it pretty consistently because I, as an Australian, are still able to find matches across all of the different playlists very quickly as well. I'm not sitting there waiting 20 minutes, which even if I was, would still be half of the time I waited in Brawlout. And the big reason why Brawlhalla is able to do that and find games in less than a minute is because the game is free to play. It's so much easier to convince people to come play a free to play game, regardless of what it is. If you're confident in your product and you think it's good, and Brawlout is good, the gameplay of it feels smooth, if you are truly confident in it, you should be able to make the game free to play. The way Brawlhalla does it is that they give you some characters for free. Obviously in Brawlout they have less characters, so you only probably get like 1 or 2. But if you want access to all of the characters, you have to basically purchase the game. It would be a $20 purchase, and then you have access to all the characters and all the characters that they add in the future. That's the way that Brawlhalla does it, and that's the way that Smite does it. It's been done in a few other different games. This is so important because not only will you get more people playing the game, because obviously it's a much easier system to be able to tell somebody, hey, come play this free-to-play game with me, than it is to say, hey, come spend $20 on this game. But each player, or customer in this case, is more valuable than they would be if the game was $20. If the game's $20, that's the most they're going to spend. I mean, you might add some skins later or whatever, but if your game is free to play and you add, I mean, people don't like this word, but microtransactions with skins and other stuff like that, cosmetic-based things, that consumer who was never going to purchase your game at $20 started playing free to play, realized he really enjoyed it, bought the $20 pack so that he has all the characters and all the future characters, and occasionally buys skins, and then over time you end up with somebody who would have spent $0 on your game who maybe end up spending 40 or 60 or even just the 20 for the pack. Obviously there will be consumers who are going to spend no money on the game if it's free to play, but those types of consumers are the people who were never going to purchase it in the first place. I know that was a bit of a rant, and I know it took me a long time to just get through that one point, but it's so important that fighting game developers notice this, because we theoretically could have a very active community in a fighting game, and it would be amazing to be able to log in and play a fighting game and know that I'm going to be able to find a match. Right now, as an Australian, like I said, I live in a very low populated area. There are very few fighting games out there that I can actually technically play. Injustice 2 is even starting to get to the point where it's like, I can't exactly play all the time. Sometimes I'll try playing ranked, and it can take upwards of 5 minutes to find a game, which is fine. I'm okay waiting that amount of time to be able to play the game, but it's insane to me that we're in 2017, we're halfway through 2017, and no fighting game has even been announced to be free to play and being produced by a fairly big developer without quarter circle movements or things like that. You can have your game be difficult without these things, and Brawlout definitely does not have quarter circle movements. You have regular, like, you've just got a special button for abilities. So Brawlout, in this case, literally everything about the game I like. I like the gameplay. I like the visuals. In fact, I love the visuals. I think the game looks incredibly impressive. And the gameplay, whilst not doing anything particularly innovating or amazing, it works. It runs well. It feels smooth. But the fact that you cannot play online, depending on what region you're in. Obviously, if you're in America and you're in a populated city or region, you're going to be able to find games. But the fact that I just can't find a game in Australia is just embarrassing. And there's not much that the game can do about it, whilst being a $20 game. And it's a shame to me, because Brawlout had a chance to be one of my favorite games released this year. And I mean that genuinely. I just want a game to be released that we can actively play, preferably on PC, but wherever, really. I feel like a lot of people are going to take away from this video that I want every game to be free to play. That is not the case. The reason a fighting game, specifically an easy fighting game, I hate using the word easy fighting game because it's not quite what I mean. What I mean is a fighting game without directional inputs or quarter circle motions or anything like that. A game like that needs to be free to play. You would break the genre. Like, there would be so much changed based on that title. This is one of the reasons I'm really upset that Rising Thunder was cancelled, because it had a chance to become the world's biggest fighting game. And Brawlout could have taken that torch for a little bit. I think Brawlout could have been a huge game if it was free to play, but unfortunately, it's just not. And I don't think it will ever get to the point where we're able to call Brawlout a big game, and it will do moderately well on Steam, and people will play it, and there'll be a small esports community, but it will just be another fighting game. And it probably won't even be a big fighting game. And that's really sad to me, because there's ways that they could have gone about developing this game, including the free-to-play model, that would have made it one of the biggest games in esports. I know that this is possible. Somebody in the fighting game genre could do this, however, Brawlout has not. That being said, if you're looking for a fun experience to play with some friends, I'm sure Brawlout is sufficient. That being said, of course, every one of your friends you want to play with is going to have to fork up that $20. Thank you guys for watching this video. Hopefully you did manage to enjoy it. My name has been Bilbzy, and I will see you in tomorrow's video.